I had just heard for the first time, but apparently wasn't funny enough to be told to me. The sound of her laugh used to mean something. It used to be ours. Private. Worn in like an old hoodie or a favorite mug. But that night in our dining room it belonged to someone else. Or maybe it always had. The worst part, I was the one who invited him. I thought I was doing something generous. Thought it would be a nice surprise. Brenton was just an old friend, she said, from a different lifetime. I believed her. Or maybe I needed to. Now there he was, sitting between her and my cousin, charming the entire table like he'd never left. Like I'd never existed. He remembered her dad's barbecue recipe, knew how she liked her wine, and even brought her favorite flowers, lilacs. I didn't even know she liked lilacs. I should have said something. I should have stopped it. But instead I sat there, nodding, chewing, pretending the mashed potatoes didn't taste like drywall, and shame. When I finally stood up, no one noticed. I took my coat, stepped outside, and waited. A minute, then 5, then 15. Not a single message, not a glance through the window. No one followed me, not even her. It wasn't the silence that crushed me. It was realizing I was the only one who thought this night was supposed to matter. I didn't plan to leave. I hadn't even finished my food. The plate was still warm when I walked out, and the glass of wine she poured me was still 3/4 full. I don't know what I was expecting. Maybe some tiny acknowledgement, a glance, a pause in her laugh. But none of that came. She was sitting on my left, turned entirely toward Brenton, like gravity itself had shifted toward him. And I was just air. I didn't slam the door, didn't make a scene. I even closed it softly, so the wind wouldn't catch it. I stood outside for a moment, watching my own living room glow through the windows, candles flickering, silverware clinking, her hand resting lightly on his shoulder as she laughed at something he whispered. It looked like a scene from a movie, the kind where the husband is already dead, but his ghost is still standing in the driveway watching his family move on. I drove aimlessly for hours, ended up in a grocery store parking lot 20 meters, the kind that stays open 24 hours, but feels abandoned at night. I sat there with the engine off trying to figure out if I was being dramatic or if this was what betrayal felt like when it didn't come with shouting or lipstick stains. Just laughter that didn't belong to you anymore. I checked my phone 6 times. Nothing. No, where are you? No missed calls. She hadn't even noticed I was gone. Or maybe she did and it just didn't matter. Around 11:48 p.m. I got a message from my sister. "Hey, you okay? You dipped." That's what she said. You dipped. Like I just left a bar early. I didn't reply. What could I say? "Yeah, I'm great. My wife's ex stole the spotlight at our dinner table and I turned invisible. How's your salad?" I went home eventually, quietly, the way I always do things. When I opened the door, the dining room was empty. Dishes in the sink, lights dimmed, her heels by the stairs. No sign of Brenton. I climbed into bed next to her. She was asleep already, or pretending. I laid there staring at the ceiling, listening to the silence between us grow louder than any fight we'd ever had. And that was when I realized something deeper than betrayal was setting in. This wasn't just about him. This was about me, slowly disappearing in my own marriage, and no one even noticing I was gone. The next morning she acted like nothing had happened. I woke up first, not because I'm an early riser, but because I hadn't really slept, just drifted in and out of shallow dreams where I'd walk into rooms and no one saw me. At some point during the night, she had turned her back to me, one leg draped across the sheets like she owned all of them. I remember staring at the curve of her shoulder, wondering if I'd ever get the old version of her back. or if I'd just imagined that version to begin with.
She stirred around 7:40, stretched like a cat in sunlight, and rolled onto her back with a sigh that felt too casual, too rested. Then she blinked, smiled, and said it. "Did you sleep okay?" Just like that. Not a trace of tension in her voice. Not a hint of curiosity about where I'd gone or why I disappeared during a family dinner that I spent weeks organizing. No. Where were you? Number. Why did you leave? Just, did you sleep okay? I told her yes. I lied. I always lie when it's easier than explaining a feeling she's already stopped caring about. She got out of bed humming, literally humming, like she was in a shampoo commercial. I lay there still half frozen from the night before and listened to her walk barefoot across the wood floor, pausing only to check her phone. She giggled at something. I didn't ask what. I knew what. By the time I made it downstairs, she was already dressed for brunch with the girls. That's what she said. Not which girls, just the girls. I asked if Brenton was going too. She looked at me like I'd asked if her yoga mat had feelings. "Why would he?" she said, laughing. Then she kissed me on the cheek, grabbed her bag and left. It wasn't just the kiss that felt off. It was the way she didn't even wait for me to say anything back, like she was done before I even had a chance to speak. I sat at the kitchen table staring at the empty wine glasses from the night before. Hers still had a faint print of lipstick on the rim. I picked it up, looked at it closely. It wasn't her usual color. She had changed it for the night for him, not for me. And that's when something sharp and heavy settled in my chest. The kind of realization that doesn't shout or explode. It just sits there, quiet, permanent. I didn't just lose her. I had been losing her for a long time. I was just the last one to notice. It was supposed to be just another Tuesday, but I woke up with a strange heaviness, like the house itself had shifted slightly overnight, and I was the only one who noticed. The place felt quieter than usual. Not the peaceful kind, the empty kind. I wandered downstairs half-dressed, still hoping to smell her perfume in the air or hear the sound of her heels clicking against the tile. Nothing. Just the soft hum of the fridge and the faint ticking of the old wall clock we never bothered replacing. She hadn't come home the night before. Technically, she had, but by the time I heard the front door creak open, it was nearly 2:30 a.m. She didn't come to bed. I stayed upstairs listening to her moving around downstairs. Light footsteps, a glass clinking, then the soft buzz of her phone. She was whispering and I couldn't make out words, just the tone. Software. Familiar. Not for me. That morning I found her note. Not even a real note. A half-crumpled receipt from a juice bar with the words, "Morning meeting back later, XO," scribbled on the back and green pen. She'd drawn a little smiley face next to it. A part of me wanted to laugh. Another part wanted to rip it in half and flush it. I picked up my phone, opened our shared calendar. Nothing marked for the day. No meeting, no brunch, no reminder. But there was a missed call. My sister. I tapped the voicemail icon, not thinking much of it. And that's when I heard something that sent a cold spike down my back. It wasn't my sister's voice. It was Nvilla's. Her voice caught accidentally in the background of a voicemail, like fate had slipped up and exposed the truth. She was laughing. That same laugh from the dinner party, that high sparkling sound that used to make me feel lucky. Only now it made my stomach twist. She wasn't laughing with my sister. She was laughing near her. And so was someone else. A man's voice, too close, too comfortable. I replayed the message 6 times, each time isolating her voice from his, trying to convince myself it was just some waiter, some stranger passing by.
But no, it was Brenton. That casual, smug tone he used when he talked about wine regions and rooftop lounges. It bled through the audio like a signature. I sat there on the edge of the couch, phone shaking in my hand as the voicemail ended with a loud burst of shared laughter. Then silence. I couldn't breathe. This wasn't about dinner anymore. This wasn't in my head. She wasn't slipping away. She had already left. By Wednesday, I stopped pretending I didn't notice. The denial that patted every corner of my mind finally gave out, like an old chair that had been wobbling for years. And yet, I still hadn't confronted her, not directly. I think I was scared of what would happen if I put it into words. Like saying it out loud would turn it from suspicion to reality, and I wasn't ready for it to be real. That morning I stayed home from work, told my boss I had a stomach bug. It wasn't a complete lie. Something inside me was rotting. A mix of paranoia, guilt, and helplessness that made food taste like paper and sleep feel like punishment. Na left the house in a hurry, barely glancing in my direction. She wore that gray coat she never used to like, hair tied back in a way that always made her look younger, freer. She didn't even bring coffee to go like she usually did, just grabbed her keys and vanished. I stared at the front door for a long time after it closed. Then I opened my laptop. I didn't know what I was looking for. Maybe her browsing history or her emails. I knew her passwords, not because I snooped, because she gave them to me years ago when we still trusted each other with everything. There was nothing in her email, nothing in her search history either, except a weird trail of deleted tabs. That was strange. Na never deleted tabs. She always left 10 open at once like digital breadcrumbs. I closed the laptop, sat on the edge of the bed, and that's when I heard her tablet buzz. She rarely used it. It was tucked under a pillow in the reading nook. I opened it, hands shaking, pulse loud in my ears. One message unread, glowing on the screen. It wasn't even locked. Brenton, you always did wear gray when you were planning something. I froze. My throat went dry, and before I could think, another message popped up. Brenton, still on for later? I can meet by the back lot again. No one will see. My brain tried to reason with it. Maybe they were planning a surprise. Maybe I was misreading. But then came the third message. Brenton, if he finds out, we'll deal with it. Just like before. Before. That word punched me in the gut. I had no idea what before meant, but clearly they did. I stared at the screen until it dimmed and went black, and in that moment, I realized this wasn't just betrayal. It was a pattern. A story that had started long before I ever noticed, and I'd been cast as the fool who never asked for the script. I wasn't planning to follow her. That kind of thing feels ridiculous when you've convinced yourself you're still holding on to dignity. But when Na left that afternoon in a rush, coat wrinkled, hair too perfect, phone clutched like a lifeline, something inside me shifted. It wasn't anger. Not yet. It was curiosity mixed with the kind of dread you feel before a test you forgot to study for. I grabbed my keys, waited a full 3 minutes, then pulled out of the driveway like a stranger. She didn't see me. She didn't look back once. I stayed 2 cars behind, not close enough to draw suspicion, not far enough to lose her. My hands were sweating the whole time. Even though the air conditioning was on full blast, I kept thinking, what if I'm wrong? What if she's just going to the store to meet a client? But deep down, I already knew the destination. She pulled into a parking garage I'd never seen her use, the kind near the far end of town, tucked between a coffee shop and an apartment complex too modern for people like us. She got out, didn't check her surroundings, and walked fast, like she'd done it before. I parked, waited, watched her disappear around the corner. 10 minutes passed before I saw him. Brenton.
He showed up like he belonged there, hands in his pockets, sunglasses on, a smirk already forming before he even reached the door. I wanted to believe they were meeting in public, somewhere innocent. But when they both disappeared behind the side entrance of that building, no signs, no offices, just glass doors and a keycard scanner, something inside me cracked in too. I didn't follow them in. I just sat there in my car, staring at the door they vanished behind, wondering how long this had been happening right under my nose. How many times had she smiled at me in the morning after sneaking away the night before? How many times had I kissed a version of her that didn't exist anymore? The worst part wasn't even the betrayal. It was the familiarity of it all. Like this wasn't their first time. Like they had a system. I stayed in that car for over an hour until the sun dipped low and the city lights flickered on. She came out alone. Brenton didn't follow. She looked calm, peaceful even. She checked her reflection in the window of a parked car, fixed her lipstick and got back in hers like it was just another Tuesday. I waited 5 more minutes. Then I drove home. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I just kept whispering to myself, "You saw it now. You saw it." There's no pretending anymore. But knowing didn't make it easier. It only made it real. She came home that night, humming. It wasn't even a song, just a soft, tuneless melody under her breath. As she kicked off her shoes at the door, her heels landed near the welcome mat, one slightly tilted, as if even they had no energy to pretend anymore. I was in the kitchen pretending to scroll my phone, pretending not to look up. But my heart was beating so loudly I could hear it in my ears. She didn't notice me watching her. Or maybe she did and just didn't care. Enveia poured herself a glass of water, leaned against the counter and took a slow sip like she hadn't just walked out of some mystery building with a man I wasn't supposed to think about. Then she asked me how my day was. Her voice was bright, even sweet. That was the moment something inside me turned cold. I didn't answer her. I just looked at her, waiting, watching. She blinked, confused for the first time in weeks. "What?" she asked, half laughing like I'd said something silly without realizing. But I hadn't said anything at all. I just stood up, walked to the drawer, pulled out the spare phone I thought I'd never use again, and placed it gently on the counter between us. "Is there something you want to tell me?" I asked. Her smile wavered. "Not vanished." Not yet, but the edges cracked. A small twitch at the corner of her mouth. A micro-expression that gave away more than any confession ever could. "Why would you ask that?" she said too quickly. I didn't answer. I tapped the phone screen once. It lit up to a message I hadn't opened but had read from the lock screen. "Brenton, next time let's not rush. You looked incredible today." She stared at it, then at me. She didn't reach for it, didn't blink, just stood there frozen, calculating. And in that awful charged silence between us I saw it. The flicker of guilt, the fear, the collapsing walls. Her mask slipped for the first time. "I can explain," she whispered. I walked away, not out of anger, not out of strength. I just couldn't breathe standing that close to someone who thought I was stupid enough to need an explanation. I sat in the living room staring at nothing while she stood in the kitchen, unmoving, unprepared. I wasn't ready to leave, not yet. But for the first time in our marriage, she looked afraid I might. The next morning I made her coffee, not out of habit, not out of love. I just wanted the moment to feel normal before I made it anything but. I placed her mug in front of her at the table like I always did. She gave a small thank you, eyes heavy with exhaustion. She hadn't slept. I could tell by the way her shoulders slumped and her hair wasn't as perfectly swept as usual. I sat down across from her. "I'm not going to ask you to explain," I said calmly, stirring my own cup. "Because if you wanted to tell me the truth, you would have already." She didn't deny it. That was the final confirmation I didn't even need anymore.
I'm not here to make you feel guilty, I continued. I'm just here to tell you what comes next. She looked up. That old glimmer of control she always carried had vanished. No tears, no fake outrage, just quiet resignation. I'm not throwing anything, I said with a dry laugh. Not your clothes, not a tantrum. I'm just done playing the part of the husband who has to earn your attention. And that was it. No ultimatums, no begging, no drama. I had already signed the lease on a small one-bedroom downtown, paid 3 months in advance. I'd quietly contacted a lawyer and kept things civil. No drawn-out war, no revenge games. Just the clean, quiet exit of someone who's finally learned to stop chasing what won't stay. I walked out later that day with a single suitcase and my name. That was all I wanted to keep. It's been 3 months since then. I don't miss the silence in our home, because now in my own space, the silence feels peaceful, not heavy. I've started reading again, cooking for one, relearning what I like without needing someone to validate it. And every now and then, I think back to that dinner, that laugh, that moment she forgot I was even there. It doesn't sting anymore. It just reminds me why I'm better off not being the invisible man in someone else's story. Thanks for watching this full journey on Reddit Confessions. Now it's your turn. Have you ever witnessed a moment in history, personal or global, where someone's silence said more than words ever could? Drop your story in the comments below. We'd love to hear from you. And don't forget to like, subscribe, and follow for more real stories that dig deeper than the surface. Until next time.